And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm really excited to be joined by Josh Tobkin. He's the CEO and co-founder of Supra. He's the OG in Web3. Supra have a super long and super interesting history, as you might expect, secrets in the name. And over the course of the show, we're going to cover oracles, we're going to cover interoperability, and the concept of the MultiVM. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for staying up late. I know you're out in Hong Kong. Thank you for staying up to join us on this live. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thanks for having me, Anthony. It's been a while since we last spoke. I think over a year and a half.
Something like that. And you guys have been busy. So I'm really excited to share what you've been up to with the group. For those people who don't know you, Josh, could you give us your brief introduction and what it is that you've been working on?
Sure. So I'll keep it brief, just to be mindful of the time. I actually have to get back to an engineering and research call momentarily here. So my name is Josh, co-founder, CEO of Supra. I've been the first experience on the internet was when I was around 11 years old, trying to figure out how to make a website to post up pictures of like my bands and like skateboards I like and stuff like this. Fast forward, got into selling things on eBay, and then beyond that, just experimenting on the web or various things. Went to college, played on a scholarship to study economics. Decided to give up the scholarship to study the art of poker. So I played semi-pro poker for several years there. Built a business on the internet in the online poker space when I was 22 with my partner at the time, who was a poker prodigy. And I went into what's called a rake back or cashback. So when you play online poker, you have the poker room gets as part of the rake. We would get the rake back for you, or like 80% of it. We'd say, hey, listen, we'd like to bring 5,000, 6,000 players to your poker room. We have we want half the revenue, and we'd give that half or 80% of that half to the player itself. Keep the difference. That was the business model. I didn't invent that, but we ran a lot of like guerrilla marketing and referral programs. Became, I think, was like the top 10 rake back site in the world at the time, before online poker became illegal. I just want to point out that back then we couldn't do paid ads because they wouldn't allow paid ads anymore. So we had to really figure out how to get creative with this. Um, Fast forward over that, I sold my shares to my partner. He went on to do very well. I got exposed to all kinds of different things and got recruited to an ad tech company that brought me to New York and then San Francisco. And in San Francisco, I transitioned away from that ad tech company. They did very well. They sold for, I think, $800 million eventually. So good for them. That's several years ago already. And I just kept on experimenting with SaaS, software as a service. Eventually got introduced to blockchain. Thought that the Ethereum was like the worst database design I've ever seen. Couldn't understand. Typical, right? And and then, but eventually it clicked for me as to why there's a trust problem on the web. I used to complain that these poker rooms were not paying us out properly. Like our player growth would increase, we have more players, but then the revenue would not track with that. Then we had no recourse because we just had the data that they would give us. So, and then once it clicked for me, I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of instances like this out there. And then I finally realized this. So I was working on SaaS product, software as a service, put it on autopilot. That service still exists to this day, even though I barely even take a look at it, which is the power of product market fit. So this experience building products, focusing on things that people actually need, has been my background. And I went out all into blockchain in early 2017, focusing on my waking life outside of my consulting work towards trying to scale Ethereum. And that's the story. There's a lot more to it. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think everybody who's found their way into Web3 has some sort of gambling element to it, but that you've gone a lot harder than most. But a fascinating story, and I think some observations there also in terms of the importance of understanding SaaS and how technology is consumed in the world, and then trying to apply that in Web3. I can relate. I think my general guidance to any Web3 project is if you really want to get scale, you've got to find a way to put software in the hands of people where they are, as opposed to forcing people to adopt Web3. A friend of mine, Diego Borges, says it's not about how do we get people from Web 2 into Web 3, it's how do we reverse engineer Web 3 into Web 2. And so having a SaaS background, I think, makes a ton of sense. Let's get on to Supra. I'm conscious we're short of time. And again, thank you for turning down the research scientists and PhDs in the Supra community on behalf of us. I'm very grateful for that. Talk to us about Supra. So at the very beginning, there were Supra oracles. Now there's Supra.com. talk to us about the story and the pivot.
Yeah, so actually, I guess continuing from where I left off, when I went all into blockchain and try to scale blockchain technology focused on Ethereum, um, I also really, it was very clear to me that blockchains needed oracles and that oracles would enable all kinds of new use cases. And actually, what we were designing, even since then, actually, the origin of Supra really dates back to 2017 San Francisco, like literally 7 years and like 15 days ago. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been a while. And so this notion of like, what if a blockchain can have oracles? That means it can do more things. And also, randomness is part of the oracle problem. Price feeds, of course, as well. Just getting external data on chain. Now, what Supra is doing, and many of you may have heard of us as Supra oracles, but our VCs in the earliest rounds, seed, pre-seed round, we told them that actually we are a layer one with native oracles and that we're going to go to market focusing on the Oracle component. We're not going to talk about the layer one component because this is an era where Solana, EVAX, Phantom, others were coming out. Their high throughput, like relatively low latency compared to Ethereum, and we were like, we can't compete with that right now, you know. And plus, we had a lot of more work to do. But there was a gap in the marketplace. There's really only Chainlink as a viable oracle, right? And by the way, I was a Link Marine back in 2017, 18. I was a big fan of early. I always just knew inherently this is important for blockchain. So what Supra is doing ultimately, where we're at today, is we call it a fully integrated chain or vertical integration. So it's a single chain that can do Oracle price feeds in a very clever way, cross-chain communication, on-chain automation. Automation is decentralized if this and that. You, Anthony, you mentioned experience from SaaS and what developers expect and users expect. Well, blockchains, they talk about a world computer, right? But they don't have automation. We talk about world computer, but they don't communicate with the outside world. And they don't communicate with each other. You need cross-chain communication protocols. So we designed a system that's, like what seems to be kind of popular is when I explain to normies or people new to crypto, or relatively new to crypto, I say, well, imagine if Solana and Chainlink and Layer Zero came together and like made a baby. That's what Supra is.
All right. Park aside how that image is now playing in my head, I sort of understand it. Again, I think for the longest time, up until recently, actually, I've seen some of the mood and the narrative shift. But broadly speaking, we saw a number of layer ones who were trying to position themselves as the fastest, the cheapest, the greenest, the best alternative to Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum came out as programmability for decentralized networks that Bitcoin couldn't provide. And then everybody said, "Oh, this is quite a big thing. Let's go and try and do a better version of that." And so you saw a lot of chain maximalism for a long time. But then you started to see maybe more of the concept of app chains or chains that had slightly different parameters, slightly different programmability. We're now starting to see zero knowledge and data protection come in at a protocol level. And between those different chains, you still, to some extent, want to keep their characteristics, their functionality, but you might want that to mesh with other applications and other chains, or you might want to compose an application that includes something from Solana, something from Chainlink, something from Midnight, whatever it might be. And so it sounds like what Supra is trying to do is to try and be the trusted, I don't want to say bridge, because I suspect you may have a little bit of an aversion to using the word bridge, but certainly the link between those different layer ones. Am I close?
Yes and no. I mean, so we don't use the word link and we don't use the word bridge. No, I'm just kidding. No, but
Rely your Link Marine days.
yeah. I mean, basically credit where credit's due. I mean, Super wouldn't be here unless we studied Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Chainlink, and more recently in AVAX, and then more recently the DAGs and other, layer zeros and others. We really had to study a lot. And also we went deep into the academic literature back into the 80s, and you can kind of see the citations of our papers and where we kind of, we really are, let's put it this way, standing on the shoulders of giants. We wouldn't be here without everyone else. But this is kind of a privileged position to be in because we got to see everyone go first. And we got to see what the challenges are in a completely new, novel, innovative industry. The bleeding edge is hard to see, right? And this is why it took us 4 years from the time we started Supra, like as an organization itself, to where we're at today to ship at the mainnet and go live on servicing at this point, I think 160 applications across different networks. So you talked about bridge and link, and you know, we actually view ourselves as, so first and foremost, it is a layer one, and there's some interesting qualities and attributes we bring to the table that just don't exist elsewhere. So the question here I see is, what is an integrated chain? So that is actually a blockchain that has Oracle price sheets, that has cross-chain communication, that has automation, that has on-chain randomness, a single platform, shared security, and as a result, we're also faster. So we're safer, faster, and cheaper because we also optimize the consensus algorithm. We didn't just take anything, we didn't take any component off the shelf, right? This is built from scratch, from first principles. This is not like an L2 that's saying, hey, we're going to take this component, we're going to borrow this data availability layer, this programming language, staple it together, and say we're something new. It's something new, sure, but it's much easier to do that than to build the whole entire new layer one from scratch with these integrated components. So to kind of, instead of bridge or link, we actually are building something, another term that you're going to hear from us a lot more, say February next year, is intralayer, a middleware network. So yes, it's full on a layer one itself, and it's standalone, and it can be fine on its own. But this intra layer, this notion of the word intra means within, right? Between or within. So we do want to be almost like this execution layer that's connected to all these ecosystems, and that can, as a result, facilitate cross-chain DeFi, cross-chain use cases. Because the truth is, you know, the Solanas, the Ethereums, especially, and these other major ecosystems, the Sui and Aptoses that are merging and others, they're not going anywhere. And there will be, in my opinion, a power law distribution, just like there are several major cloud providers today. There'll be major Web3 infrastructures, but someone has to pull it all together in a unified manner while preserving the layer one security. So that's what Supra is doing. And this can only really be done to build the vision of a layer one that can communicate cryptographically secure with the other layer ones, while also providing more functionality through price feed oracles, and automation is a big one. Now we can do sophisticated cross-chain strategies in an automated manner. Your automation may need price feeds and information across other chains in order to trigger and deterministically and transparently trigger some sort of strategy. So we call these things autonomous decentralized agents. It's not quite AI, but there is really, really interesting use cases that will be enabled by this. This whole stack, especially when we focus on us being this middleware system infrastructure that connects and amplifies actually other ecosystems too. We're actually not taking away, we're amplifying. We call this an intro layer.
I like that, Josh, and thank you for clarifying, because I have dramatically undersold what you've put together by using terms like bridge and link. And unfortunately, in Web3, you've got a number of these terms or the vernacular which carries some baggage with it. And so when people think bridge, it's okay, it's a token bridge. Like you're moving tokens from one network to the other, and that's useful because DeFi. Actually, what you described there's a whole bunch more functionality for application builders that is more holistic. It's not just about being able to put bridge technology between an app on one side and another. You're actually adding an awful lot more. I'm interested, what are the technology primitives or the capabilities underneath Supra that enable that shared security, or what are some of the innovations that you guys have brought in that maybe improves on what went before?
Yeah, so first of all, there is enough bandwidth and there's enough compute for a single node to be doing more things. So we call this vertical integration. So a single node has, and the thing is, there will be limits though, right? So you can be doing more than just smart contract execution and cryptography verification. You can be connected to multiple data sources and run a sub protocol for Oracle. You can be running a threshold signature scheme to create on-chain randomness. It's actually very little compute and bandwidth required to do this. And then also automation. All these protocols are unique in themselves. And yes, a single machine can do this. However, to have decentralization at scale, you have to re-architect the network itself. So we have a unique network architecture that doesn't exist before. We're the first to do this. We call this the tribes and clans architecture. So imagine the entire network is called the tribe. Now, if we absolutely need to go there, we can go into a multi-tribe infrastructure, but right now it's suitable for just a single tribe. What we do is we also randomize the nodes into subcommittees called clans. Now, the really subtle but powerful insight Supra has is when the super majority of the nodes in the tribe, meaning like 67% or 2/3 plus one, they have to run consensus for what's called for global ordering, like so that everyone has the right order of transactions across the world, right? So we do need that super majority agreement. Now, what's really spectacular in our insight is the following. In the randomized subcommittees called clans, those clans, individual clans, can be running these subprotocols in a simple majority. So it's only 51%. So it's actually only 51% of the nodes in the tribe, sorry, 51% of a random selected subcommittee of the tribe that need to compute this. So let's just suppose that a clan is 100 nodes. We actually only need 51 nodes to complete the protocol while preserving the security as long as you have this global ordering and randomness. So what does this mean? It means we don't have to, let's say the tribe is 500 nodes. You actually only need randomized 51 nodes to do this execution. And whereas traditional protocols from back in the day, from the 2017 to 2021 era, those are all, they all just thought everyone has to do everything. They all thought everyone has to do 67%. Why does this matter? It's slower, it costs more because you have to pay out more nodes to do the service, and it's not parallelized. So we are able to do this on a network level. And this is where we actually get this extreme performance. And this is why we fundamentally believe that we are pushing against the not only speed of light limits, but also the safety considerations that are possible. Like we are confident you can't go beyond what we've done while maintaining the security of the network. So yeah, this is where we're at.
Fantastic. So you've reduced the amount of redundancy in the network, and you can then apply that extra capacity for additional features or additional functionality. So you talked about generating randomness. You talked about processing additional activities and transactions. You're basically creating a more efficient node infrastructure, and then integrating with that the more functionalities that people want to be able to maintain that intra layer. That's more useful than just a bridge. It's more useful than just an oracle. It is a stack of Web3 functionality that is more efficient and therefore can do more than traditional L1s.
That's right. Exactly.
All right. Well, that's a good start. And if we can explain it on LinkedIn and we can explain it simply, then hopefully that's something that everybody else can understand as well. I think that sounds super powerful. Let's talk about what that means for people building. So I'm already starting to get it, but talk to me about what that means for people who want to build decentralized applications, for people who are looking at Web3 saying, I don't know if I'm deciding between wanting to build something on Solana versus Ethereum. What will bring people to Supra?
So first of all, these developers are going to be able to do things on Supra you can't do elsewhere, right? Literally, you won't be able to have this all in a single stack. Like the status quo today is you have to rely on one layer one for smart contract execution, a different disparate network, different protocol, different team, everything, and a completely different set of nodes to do the Oracle price feeds or bridge and automation. Those also, Oracle price feeds is one different network, bridge is a different network, automation is a different network, on-chain random is a different network. Now we kind of have this internal joke. We call these Frankenstein dApps. Like the status quo is a Frankenstein dApp, where you have to like plug and play and stitch together things. And for the developer, they have to learn all these different frameworks. And they also, your application that relies on price feeds or your application relies on bridge, you don't have layer one security anymore. You have the security of the weakest component, So these are major challenges. And also, if you're a developer and you have to manage these different networks, you have to manage their tokens. You have to, manage the economics of the systems, and it's complex and expensive. So it's like only downside. It's more expensive. It's less security. It also takes longer because you have to communicate with the network. They have to finish the protocol, respond back to you. You have to wait for finality before you can execute it. So it's higher latency. So so more expensive, less secure, and slower. That's the
and more complex to composers, right? Because obviously each of those different networks will then go through upgrades or new feature releases or whatever else it might be that might break whatever integrations you've managed to Frankenstein between the different networks. So from a developer and architect's perspective, you're reducing the complexity in the stack, which
absolutely
then also allows you to build faster, have less downtime, or less worry about how do we make sure that we're running effectively as a DApp.
Well, yeah, exactly. And what we are aspiring for is a single infrastructure, single framework, single token, shared security. It's cheaper, it's safer, it's faster, and it's easier to deploy. I mean, that's just we call this a builder's paradise.
It sounds like it, and certainly we've engineered a huge amount of complexity into Web3. DApp builders tolerate it today, but if we are going to see a wider adoption of decentralized technology, of the decentralized web, we cannot expect people to have to go through the same pain that the early adopters have. And so it sounds
That's
like
right.
that's one of the challenges that you guys are starting to work through, which is really powerful. You mentioned you might be starting to use some new nomenclature in February. Maybe February is an auspicious date or an important date for Supra, but let's talk about what's coming up next for you guys.
Yeah, so our automation service is not fully live yet. It should be live on testnet. It's fully designed and spec'd out, but it'll be live in testnet towards the end of January. I'm really excited about this. The automation itself will, because we already have layer one, we already have oracles, we have on-chain randomness. Once you add in automation, you know, smart contracts with automation and access to Oracle price feed data and external world events can enable all kinds of use cases. Also in the roadmap around this period, maybe slightly early, there'll be a bridge. So we have a bridge that is being deployed through an external team, and they know that Supra has a different technology and approach, but our bridge won't be ready for mainnet maybe into February as well. So, but at that stage, when we have, that's basically gets us to full stack. We have layer one, price feed oracles, on-chain randomness, automation, and cross-chain communication. And by the way, I should mention, it's not a traditional bridge. We don't actually rely on an external set for this. We have a very simple idea. Once you see it, you can't look away, which is, let's suppose in the proof of stake world, where all the node operators stake has to be registered for them to be participating in the protocol. If we, as a result, we do know their public key addresses. Everyone, it's public information to verify a consensus on these chains. You need to know the public address. So Supra can get this information, which is very inexpensive and cheap for us to get this information. We just ask ourselves, why don't we just recompute their consensus? It's not that expensive and it's not that low latency. So we just check their consensus that everything is that they have actually reached the super majority on their chains. This allows us to also come to an agreement internally. What's interesting about this is we skip the bridge. It's bridgeless. It's layer one to layer one security. This is a major innovation. We've known that bridges have been traditionally a major problem in the space the last few years. But what we're doing is we're applying our layer one consensus nodes to verify the consensus of the chains we interact with. And when we interact with other chains, we're able to make it easy for them to prove that we have reached consensus as well. So it's really interesting because it's bridgeless. It's actually layer one to layer one communication. Oh, so Anthony, I think you might be mute. I cannot hear anything at the moment.
Sorry,
Okay.
it's back to 2021 where we're still struggling for mute buttons again. So it's more through observability of consensus than it is through creating minting and burning mechanisms and various other kind of technology that bridges use today to add to security. But even so, depending on how the bridges are constructed, are not always foolproof.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's put it this way. All those functionalities, they may be similar. However, what's actually happening today is you go from one layer one through a different committee of nodes, smaller set of nodes, to another layer one. So what the second layer one, the destination chain is ultimately verifying is the bridge consensus or agreement, not the original chain's agreement. And we were like, well, why don't we just recompute and execute the consensus and just take the consensus. So if we have awareness of all the node identities, then we can see if their consensus, the cryptographic signatures prove that they have reached that super majority agreement. So we skip that little micro bridge in between. And this is, it's going to be faster, it's cheaper, and it's way safer. So we're very excited about this.
Super powerful. And you've got the extra capacity in the network to be able to do the extra work required on your side. So it's not like it's an extra overhead to the node operators compared to other networks. So
not too bad, not too bad. And I'll tell you guys the truth also. We kind of have a middle ground approach. We're in between Ethereum and Solana on the specs of hardware, for example. I also tend to I have been convinced, back in the day in 2017, 18, 19, 20, I was like completely into Ethereum's ideas. You know, like let's do some Raspberry Pis. But actually, Anatoly from Solana has over the years, I have a very limited in-person relationship with him. I've met him like once or twice, but online, just reading his content and engaging him over the years, I am convinced that there is a middle ground here, that Moore's law and what's called Nielsen's law, which is related to bandwidth increasing, we should be comfortable to increase the hardware. It's getting cheaper. It is getting cheaper. So, you know, imagine in 50 years from now, blockchain nodes are going to be pretty awesome. They're going to be huge, but they're also going to be small, like you can run in your house, because technology is going to be improving. So, you know, we want to find a middle ground where, you know, it is very useful to have more cores and have better hardware. There's a lot of benefits there, and also more bandwidth for sure. Yet at the same time, what we have done is we have focused on running our tests and optimizing our code and algorithms and protocols on smaller machines. So we don't sweep the inefficiencies on the rug, we address them. And then when you optimize your code this way and then move into better machines, you have better performance as a result. So just telling you that we're not against bigger machines. We're very conscious about the economics of the system, very, very conscious of this. Nonetheless, our team is instructed, and what we do is we run our tests on smaller machines first, see how it performs, find out where things are bottlenecked or inefficient. Is there a way for us to fix this through optimizing the code or adjusting the protocol itself? Once we kind of get down to the most efficient design, then we introduce it to a larger machine. Then it runs much better, like butter, you know?
Nice. I like that. And personally, as somebody working with zero knowledge and client side proving, I think everyone's acutely aware that we're asking networks and individual users to do some quite complex, quite compute heavy things. But you've got to be in this for the long game, right? It's not that we're not going to see the use of Web3. We're not going to see the use of zero knowledge or data protection technology or nodes in 5 years from now. The 50-year story is one thing. I think the 5-year story is another. Is, you know, at least 1 or 2 more cycles worth of technology improvement and things that we're trying to solve for today by using multi-party computation, you could do client side, or you could do with a lightweight hardware accelerator of some kind, or something that might actually be in a desktop computer of some kind, rather than having to use specific server-side infrastructure that's, you know, not a huge cost, because we do have a lot of servers in the world that are underutilized, but it makes it more accessible. It makes it more available on the edge, and that allows for more applications and better applications. So,
yeah, we do. We all want it. Yeah, no, we all want that vision as well, for sure.
So I'm conscious you've got your research scientists and PhDs to get back to. So I'll ask you one last question before we go, if that's okay, Josh. What more do you think, given this architecture that you're creating and the vision that you have for a better, more usable, more composable version of Web3 for builders, what do you think is needed to see wider adoption of Web3 technology in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think some real world use cases, and also making it as simple as possible to plug and play. And, you know, actually what's going to happen, this is kind of funny. So I had YouTube on earlier, right? And I saw I don't know if you guys know this, there's a fake XRP ad, you know, with Brad Garlinghouse, or I forget his last name, the CEO of XRP. It's a deep fake, and it looks very real. And they're saying that they're going to give 100 million XRP away, and YouTube allowed this. I took screenshots of this. Things like this, especially with AI deepfakes and stuff. So this will accelerate the need for a public key infrastructure and a blockchain for identity verification. And I do also tend to believe that um, folks will start to like say, I don't trust it unless I can verify it, you know, as a result, because it's so easy to proliferate fake content that looks convincing. I was surprised. But I mean, imagine that, right? Brad Garlinghouse has an XRP ad on YouTube that they allowed, which is a deep fake, saying they're going to be giving away 100 million XRP tokens, and it looks real, sounds real. If you look carefully, you can tell it's AI. But things like this, AI is going to get better, and no one's going to believe media anymore unless you check some sort of verification. So things like that are going to force blockchain to go mainstream. You know, of course, value transfers. We think there's a whole new world of micropayments that are enabled through blockchain technologies. Like a transaction at Supra is like 1,000 of a penny. You know, because we're so high throughput. We've hit 500,000 transactions per second throughput. with sub-second consensus finality on 300 nodes. The big thing is to do it on more nodes. Other networks can do this on 50 nodes. We've done it on 300 nodes. This enables micro pennies or very small sub penny micro fees. And this opens a whole new world that Visa and MasterCard cannot service. It's not worth it for them, right? But it's going to enable all kinds of use cases that we're not so aware of, like micro subscriptions, people paying each other 10 cents a month or a week. Visa, I think it's like 30 cents and 1% or something like this, you know? So they don't want to even touch that. It's too small for them. But it's going to things like that, micro subscriptions, AI verification, stable coins, value transfers, on-chain FX, foreign exchange. Actually, Supra is going to be a great chain for FX because it's layer one, it's fast, it's cheap, and it also has price feed data. So you can do on-chain stablecoin FX through Supra in a cross-chain setting. I know that's a lot of words, but basically, there are going to be some of these major use cases that do propel Web3 into society. And I think it's going to start to happen now. And I think AI is actually the catalyst towards this. So it's an exciting time to be alive, guys.
Certainly is. I'm sure you were tempted to go in and grab that XRP drop. Not financial advice, everybody. Watch out for scams. Always do your own research, and make sure you stay safe when you're out there on the internet, and particularly YouTube now. Really exciting example, really relevant example. Thank you so much, Josh. I'll let you get back to the team. Good luck with the upcoming work. Good luck with the continued evolution of the technology. Thank you so much for taking the time, and stay safe out there.
You too. Thanks, Anthony.